recording now. I'm not sure if I want to get a drink or not. I'm so full. I'm not going to want to drink Moscow Mule on a full stomach like this. Carbonation is going to give me quick heartburn after eating Thai food like that.
And you don't need to be recording this, so you could just,
it's all good.
You could just stop it and,
it's all it's all talk.
But,
it's all, you watch Joe Rogan, they're just bullshitting about everything. They're bullshitting about the dumbest stuff. You know, cigars they're smoking or just anything, Because his podcasts go over 2 hours long, sometimes 3 hours long. Just rambling on.
Well,
and they get to drinking
but this is also an opportunity that you can go back and edit too.
Sure.
Because you can be like, okay, yeah, let's start at a different point and let's edit that out.
Yeah.
But no. So what I was gonna ask you, or that we were talking about earlier today about, I don't know if in general men and women think about the other person in the sense of, a man may be like, okay, it's Valentine's Day, let me buy her flowers. It's her birthday, I got to get her a card. But do you think about
What's going through her mind?
The daily business of, like I was talking about how, men need to feel like they're the man.
Yeah.
And does a woman ever sit around thinking, okay, I bought him a gift on his birthday and I bought him a Christmas present and, I gave him some loving, but on the day-to-day basis, do you think most women are actually sitting around thinking about, does he feel good about himself? Does he feel like he's,
If they carried on their traditional roles and she was allowed to, like Andrew Tate says, if a man was providing properly like he used to for his wife, she'd be she'd be at home with kids. He'd be taking care of everything outside the house, so she wouldn't have to stress about it so much. But now with all the variables that you have, and everybody's always online, and people work, and both, two incomes, and all that, then she's stressed. So Jamie was always stressed about the day-to-day stuff outside the house because she worked, and then she'd come home from work, and she was stressed out about what happened at work and what's going to happen at work, and yada, yada, yada.
Right.
So it's like she doesn't have a chance to slow down and think about me.
Well, and in the same regard, is the man thinking, is he ever wondering, is she being fulfilled? Is she found her purpose? I mean, how many married people are sitting there thinking, is my husband found his purpose in life? Is it to be the man of the house? Is it to be the provider for his wife and kids? Or is, because some men don't want kids, some women don't want kids. That's fine. Mm-hmm. If that's how you agreed and you. But how often does one person sit around and start really considering the other person?
Well, people have, and like with careers and people's purposes and whatnot, but I think there's always time in people's lives when they think, am I supposed to be doing something else? And, I get burnt out with my job, but it's like, I know I'm good at it, and it's like, I don't always want to do it every day, but it's like, just got to find a way to stick to it. Do things you don't feel like doing. That Maddie down there, she's been in nursing. She's a CNA. She's also like, I get burnt out from it. And she goes, I'll go. She's like, I'll quit my CNA job and then I'll go work as waitress for a while, and then I'll go back to trying to be a CNA again. It's like, if you can do it, if you can manage that, then by all means. But I think people's purposes. That's also like, sometimes is it temptation? Is your mind just trying to tempt you to do something new? And sometimes, like, another thing Andrew Tate's always saying, he's like, it's not about doing what you want to do. It's about doing what you got to do. A sense of duty, and it's not always, you're not going to wake up every day feeling motivated to do what you got to do.
No.
For sure.
But I mean, should we have like a monthly or a weekly, where you go, hey, is everything going good at work? You're still fine with it? And because
communication,
for people, there's people that just don't ever talk about it. But I mean, weeks go by, months go by, and if the wife's like, okay, I'm doing my job, I'm doing my daily whatever I need to do, and does she ever stop and go like, I don't know. Is he having problems at work? Maybe I should ask him. You know?
That one guy, I can't remember what his name was. It was at a TED Talk or something. He was an older gentleman from, I think he said he was called the Texas Alpha or something like that. And he said that his wife asked him if they could try a sub and a dom thing. He said in the end it was because she wanted him to be more the leader. She's like, I think that you need to step up and be, the dominant one.
Right.
And he says that every day they take time, like they take an hour.
So that was her solution. Like, well, if I can't find any other way for him to be more...
Mm-hmm. She recommended that they look into, focusing more on stronger roles and what their marriage was. And he says, like he said, every day, like an hour of the morning, they spent, just the two of them, talking things out, talking about their life. Because he said so many people don't have time, sorry, don't have time. It's like, not that you didn't have time, it's that you didn't make time. You didn't manage your time very well. Most people are poor time managers.
And lack of communication.
Yes,
that is a major issue, lack of communication.
Yeah. Johnny, for so many years, he was like Leo. He was on a mission. He's like, I got to get out the door. I got to get going. I got to get this done. And then he never, so many days, he couldn't hardly accept what he was doing. He was burning out, and he was just like forcing himself to just keep doing stuff he didn't want to do. And so many days, he's been, up until recently, he's been like, I got to go in here and do this. I don't want to be here. It's like, yeah, obviously, Johnny, we all get like that where we don't want to do what we got to do. And it's like, obviously, he knows now that he should have been asking better questions about his marriage, and he just wouldn't do it. And he goes, well, just another night of me swallowing sadness. And I'm like, you don't have to, dude. Oh, speaking of Johnny, I must have said his name 3 times. Like Beetlejuice, and now he's appearing on my phone. Made an offer on that house. And he sent me videos I didn't see. Oh. What did he text me that? No? No, I don't see the message. Oh, yeah.
I mean, even people in our family, do you think that they ever stop? I mean, even if you just do it once a year, stop and go, let's reevaluate. Everybody good on where they're at and what they're doing. And I mean, because I'm finding that in my situation, and I feel I've been blessed that I have not had to been the major breadwinner for a long time.
Right.
I worked and I paid my own bills. I did that in my 20s, but for a long time I haven't had to been the major breadwinner. So I have free time to read and learn more things do
your homework
and learn about myself. But I mean, I have more time to think about these things and consider these things. But most people are so busy doing what they're doing. Well, I got to have my job and I got to have my kids and I got to have so everything. It's just so busy.
And in this, they've become comfortably numb, kind of, so to speak, as they've found a comfort zone where they can just stay in a routine, and it's not healthy. Like they think, like Ch3rry used to say, people start thinking in a groove. And it's really, that's what people say, I'm stuck in a rut. People are stuck in a comfort zone. It's not happy, but it's
also
familiar.
could be right. It could be not necessarily sad either.
Right.
It's just
melancholy and infinite sadness.
And they're not growing.
Nope.
Because they get in an easy rut.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and it's just like it just keeps going. It just keeps going.
Like I told you, Jim Ch3rry said about deep rest. Depressed is like deep rest. Something in you is saying, this is not for your best interest. Johnny now, he's going through all this divorce and he's seeing how it is. He's realizing there's no going back now. His wife wants the divorce. She's already got a new boyfriend and all this. And he's starting to see what it's like to have some choices, like things like to actually be able to interact with women and feel special and and talk to women confidently without now. And I'm like, feels pretty good, don't it, Johnny? I can see just in this, there's like a spring in your step, and there's change in your demeanor. And I'm like, so obviously, deep down inside of you, this is what you wanted. Deep down, you wanted, because he wasn't really happy. He was just sacrificing in his marriage. And I say, I can tell by the way you act, Johnny, you're like your old self again, because you weren't happy going on that way. He was just doing it because that's what you're supposed to do.
But
he'd been depressed for months.
I mean, years ago when it was common for a woman to get married at 18, 19, 20, 21 and not really have a job, and then they got married and started having kids, but was there as much depression and sadness? I mean, it might not have been very exciting, but then again, there was a time when you couldn't travel.
Right.
Like now you can travel everywhere, and there's so many more options to do things.
People 50 years ago had no idea how the people lived. Now you can watch it all. Like you can compare so much easier now with media. Just like there's so many reality shows, and people think that that's real. I used to tell Jamie all the time, I was like, Jamie, you're always thinking that our family is miserable and that we're losers. And I'm like, you don't know how the people really live. You don't know. You think you know. And people, so many women, they look around, they see all this, and they compare. So they're obviously like, obviously other people have it better. And what was it? I think it was, wasn't it Mark Twain said, comparison is the death of joy?
Well, I mean, 50, 75 years ago, you were just...
Life was too rough.
You were busy.
Yes.
You were busy trying to keep a meal on the table. Man was trying to bring home the bacon, and so there wasn't
time to relax.
There wasn't as much time for there to be arguments and disagreements and stuff between people. So you didn't have necessarily the neighbors down the street. Oh, they got such a great life.
With the Joneses.
There were more. It wasn't such a bigger separation, but
Rush Limbaugh said, before life got so easy and soft in this country, there were not all these health inspectors and all these kind of inspectors and all these kind of departments like OSHA and all that, because people didn't have time for that. People had to really work and have their nose to the grindstone. And he says now we have this luxury to have critics. People can afford to just be a critic, and when you're critical of everything, nothing gets done. Like you can't get anything done. Like Obama, whenever he was in office, I remember he said, "Where's the greatness that built the Golden Gate Bridge and Mount Rushmore?" Like, you won't allow that shit to happen anymore, fool, because you overregulate everything. You're afraid one person might die. Several people died making the Golden Gate Bridge. Several people died making Mount Rushmore. They put their lives on the line to do. That's a high risk, high reward.
People died. People died in the Civil War. People died in World War I. People died for fighting for battles for all through time.
Yeah.
There, countries went against countries, and people have always died and sacrificed for trying to make a better place or growing.
Mm-hmm.
Growing.
Growth is a high risk. Yeah, to take the chance of growing is like when a tree grows, there's a possibility it's going to grow into something it shouldn't grow into. That's just what has to happen. Growth is painful. Growing pains.
Look how much growth has happened since the United States became the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So, other countries before the United States became what it is, would they be more stagnant? Would they be more, under royalty? Mm-hmm. Would they still have kings and queens? And
they was talking on Joe the other day that this guy, I don't remember what his name is. He's a famous analyst, and he's worked with the government. And he was talking about how China's doomed. He's like, it really is doomed because they strangle real. There's no liberty. The birth of real growth for any nation comes from doing it out of love, not doing it out of, it's kind of an enslavement the way they are. And he's like, the fact that they don't, like Joe's like, they don't have artistic freedom over there. That's why they steal everything. They steal all our ideas. They steal all our tech ideas and everything because we've had true artistic freedom here to be an entrepreneur. Like Elon Musk can come here and try things that he wouldn't be allowed to do in China.
Right.
China just wants it to be real rigid and real washed, real whitewashed, and just like there's no individuality there. They want you to all be conformists. So when you don't breed individuality, you don't get anything really new. You don't get diversity. And that people can say, was it Daniel Tosh, the comedian, said, he goes, people go on about how racist we are here in America. He says, we're the least racist place in the world. He said, every place else is just segregated. Really, you think about it, you go to Mexico, it's Mexicans, mostly. Like 80-90%. You go to Japan, it's 90% Japanese.
Sure.
Or more.
Sure.
Like, there's not a melting pot there. So, yeah, of course, we're the first place that is like an experiment. I can't remember the comedian, he's friends with Jerry Seinfeld. He said, this is the greatest experiment ever made with humanity here. It's a big experiment. And people can just criticize everywhere else and say, well, you guys are a bunch of idiots. Well, we're trying. It's kind of like a big mixed family, and we're all trying to work it out. Who was it? Carlos Mencia, the comedian. He said, people hate us because we have the best of everything here. He said, the best of every country comes here. And makes a contribution to this country. No, almost nowhere else does that happen. Maybe
right.
in Dubai now,
right.
maybe more and more, like in the Middle East, maybe because of the oil money. But you're not going to find that much diversity. Even in England, I guess there's some Africans there. There's some what do you want to call it? Original Africans that have migrated there, but it's not like it is here in Canada. There's French and British Canadian. That's it. There's they're kind of split in half, but except for maybe way up north, is there Eskimos up there? Where the Eskimos are at? Maybe Alaska. I don't remember where they're actually located. The name indigenous I keep seeing indigenous come up a lot, which a lot of people don't know. I guess that just means actually native, or the people who were there.
But for the few people, the majority of Americans don't complain that this is a racist country, that this is a horrible country. There's actually a small percentage of people that talk about how horrible this is. Well, you can leave. Yeah. You have options. You can go.
Other countries do. So many idiots from other countries that don't know anything about here. They've been taught to hate us. It's ignorant. They haven't been over here and haven't really. Even that guy that they freed, that Russian arms dealer that they gave back to get that Brittany Griner or whatever, he said he was in prison here for years, and he's like, most Americans don't hate Russians. He said in Russia they try to make it out like they all hate, like you all hate us.
And that's that's another thing. I mean, for anybody that just lives here and doesn't ever go experience other countries, you don't know what those other countries are being told about us.
Yeah, Alan Watts used to say that about the Russians. He goes, how do you know that the Russians don't like you? He said, have you been there? Have you spoke to any of them? No, he said they're taught that we're terrible, and and then we're taught that they're terrible. And he says that's done on purpose to keep everybody separated. And more, there are political refugees. And they're trying to speak out in Russia, and they got arrested over the whole Ukraine thing. They're actually like punk, they really look like American punks. The people, a lot of them that protested, and Putin just had them all picked up and arrested for disagreeing. But they say that Russia's doing terrible against Ukraine because they're all scared of Putin will shoot the messenger. Same thing with the whatever his name, I can't think of his name, Xi Jinping or whatever the leader of China is. They'll shoot the messenger, so nobody brings them bad news. So they never really know what the truth is, because if you tell them the truth, they'll probably kill you or imprison you.
Well,
so they lie.
That's a problem as well. I mean, the truth is always the truth,
right?
No matter if somebody's feelings get hurt or not. Yeah. But circling back to men and women, I mean, is it even helpful? I mean, as men, do men even, do they want their women to ask how their day was and be concerned whether, whether you're happy about things that are going on a daily basis or weekly basis, or, I mean, when I asked my husband, because I'm not using names, but when I asked my husband one time, he's seemingly stressed, and I said, "Is there something wrong?" And then he proceeded to say this list of things. Well, I got this and this and this and this, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for all of it. And I'm like, well, how did I know that you were worrying about that?
Right.
You didn't, up until the time I asked you, you hadn't seemed like stressed for weeks on end. But all of a sudden something happened, and I'm like, wait a minute, is there something going on? Well, yeah, I'm worried about all these things, and how am I going to pay for all this? I'm like, oh, well, let's talk about it. I'm not demanding these things of you. These are just a list of things that you've thought that you want to do. I'm like, well, let's just tackle them one at a time. I'm not, I'm not demanding it of you. So
I've been guilty of it. I would be afraid to show weakness to Jamie because I didn't want to come across as a complainer or a whiner. Some women will totally be like, it will make, because then you don't want your wife or your girlfriend to worry. So you keep from saying things. Those are things Jamie's like, why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to worry. I didn't want you worrying about it,
Right.
It is frustrating.
Right. But I don't want the man to worry either. And I mean, if there's something I can do about it or something I can help, just talking about stuff sometimes helps.
Well,
but if the person ain't going to tell you these things, then how are you supposed to help?
Well, too many women, like I told Johnny, and I realized that Jamie didn't have any. To me, so many. It's harder. I think it's harder for women to have faith in things working out because they're always raised kind of to be afraid and to be motivated out of fear. And I tell Jamie, I'm like, Jamie, you never trusted that I could get the job done. Like somehow we survived all those years. Now it's like she had to go back to work, but she never trusted that things would just work out. I said somehow. Right around shortly after we turned 40, she was worried about some money thing again. I'm like, how did we ever get this far? And I'm like, it wasn't like we had a big fat savings account or anything like that.
And that's why I think that if you go back 60, 75, 80 years, when people were more hardworking, women weren't in the workforce very much, that women did trust their husbands. Their husbands are going out and making the money, and they're doing their, whatever they got to do at home. Either raising kids or taking care of the house, and you trusted him to, provide, and you weren't sitting around worrying about it. You were doing your part. He was doing his part. It was a balanced situation.
Well, Corey Wayne talks in his book about the movie Cinderella Man. I don't know if you remember that movie. It had Russell Crowe in it, where he's Jim Braddock. It's spelled just like the Braddocks, but they pronounce it Braddock. He was a boxer. Back in the days of the Depression, he had boxed, and then he was working on the he's like a what do you call it, shoreman,
longshoreman,
where they work on the docks, unloading, and struggling to get work on the docks because every guy in the city wanted it, and he was struggling to pay the bills, and I guess at one time they even had to take their kids to their grandparents because they were struggling to even have any food, and something come up where Jim could fight a guy who was, I guess, do another fight, and it was guaranteed money. And they're like, well, the guy's a pretty tough fighter, and he was well known. I guess Jim mopped the floor up with the guy, and then he got a chance to fight the champion. And the champion had supposedly even killed a few men boxing. And his wife was like, you're not fighting that guy. And Jim's like, I have to. We need the money. And she's just like, you're not fighting him. And she, I guess in the movie, she says, I'll leave. If you go to fight him, I'm not gonna show for that fight. I'm not gonna show up. I'm not going to it. And he just had to trust his masculine core and be like, I gotta do this. I gotta do it no matter what. And in the end, she, I can't remember if she shows up to the fight or she listens to it on the radio or what. But supposedly she goes to the church to pray for him, and the church that they'd been going to, I think they were Catholic. She walks in, the whole place is full of people. She's like, what are y'all doing here? Like, we're praying for Jim. And he ends up winning. That's why I call it Cinderella. He came from nothing
Mm-hmm.
and ended up, being a Cinderella story and winning the fight. And then he still went on to fight in World War II, I believe. He stepped up and went and fought in World War II. And he's like, that's what men are supposed to do. They're supposed to run towards the fire. That's what, Andrew Tate says, women say they don't need men, but he said if there's a fire or there's something broke on your car or any of that, you're going to call a masculine. If there's somebody breaking your house, you're going to call a masculine man and hope they come over and protect you.
Well, and that's something that I think is lost, is that trust factor between men and women, that respect from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I watched an episode of Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates Jr., and he did some ancestry on Jeff Daniels. And he had somebody in his ancestry that fought in the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And so the guy was only like 21 when he joined the Civil War voluntarily. He volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Skip Gates asked him, he's like, what do you think about that? He was such a young man. And he's like, Jeff Daniels is like, well, back then we didn't have sports teams.
Yeah.
We didn't have all these other things that could make men feel like men. He said, back in that day, you took off to go do that so that you could be a hero, that you could show you're a man. You could,
rites of passage.
And so you could earn respect.
Yeah.
Rites of passage. Yes, some of them died, but it's you do it because
you go out and sail the ocean or become a cowboy or something like that, but you didn't have nearly as many options.
But now you may be like, oh, I'm going to be a baseball player, and people will love me. All my family will love me. My friends will come see me, and that's part of the guy saying, look at me, see, I'm a hero.
Jimmy Stewart.
I'm a role model.
Jimmy Stewart volunteered. He went off to war, didn't he, in World War II, and he came back. He was in acting, and then he went ahead and did it. He went and active duty.
So in my, even there's men still need that
rites of passage.
That respect or that
experience
to be a man.
Life experience. Yeah.
And if the woman says, I'm going to work a job and I'm going to make twice as much money as you, and well, maybe some men can handle that.
Very few.
But I think inherently most men want to feel respected and a breadwinner. And it's not that a woman can't work and have a job, but you ought to, both people ought to be making sure that if, he feels like he has a purpose. She feels like she has a purpose. Whatever that is, if you want to change the roles and let the man stay home and be with the kids, that's fine if that works for both of you. But we still need to find our purpose.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of life unless you find your purpose?
And it's tough for these women now that have raised their kids to a certain age, and then they feel like, well, that tough part's out of the way. Now I want something else. And you can't know. You can't know if a woman's going to do that to you or not. You'd have to wait it out. So like I told Johnny, it's like, Johnny, it's tough to want to be with a woman with kids, raising kids again, because it's like you don't know how they'll be when the kids get a little older. Maybe they'll get empty nest syndrome and they want to go out and be free again and have, if you don't keep something going with them like date night, you don't keep your relationship interesting by spicing it up, on the regular.
And again, that's partly because times have changed.
Oh yeah.
Because now we all have so much free time.
Yeah.
That you have more time to be like, oh, we're just sitting around doing nothing. But
nobody can stand boredom for a minute.
And that's something that I can see that people, they may go to their job and work their job and then they come home and they got nothing to do. Well, we got plenty of entertainment. There's plenty of entertainment to keep us entertained for the 4, 5, 6 hours in the evening. Okay, I worked my job pays my bills, but now what do I do? And so you sit around with like, I feel like I don't have a purpose.
Right.
So maybe people need more things to do. Maybe some people need 2 jobs.
I see a side hustle or some kind of variety.
Because if you have children and now you're empty nesters, you either need to find a way to find things to do together, enjoy, or find your 2 separate things where you're like, okay, Tuesday nights you're going bowling and Tuesday nights I'm doing this, and that's fine. We both do our own thing. But I mean, if you do a lot of just sitting around the house, either both on your phone or on a computer, or one's watching one TV in one room and one watching another TV in another room, well, that's not really much of a relationship.
No.
But again, 75, 80 years ago, you didn't have very much free time. Well, if we go back even farther, before there was electricity, I mean, you didn't have a lot of things to do after it got dark.
Nope, you couldn't see much.
Although that's why people had 10 and 15 children, because they were doing something after dark, but but it wasn't
something.
It wasn't by candlelight. They weren't doing a whole lot of stuff by candlelight. Somebody in the winter, you had to keep the fire going.
Sure.
So somebody had to be up through the night putting more wood on the fire. There was just so many other things before TV, before electricity, before.
Yeah, it's so easy now.
Now we got all these machines to make it so much easier for a woman or man to do the dishes or clean the house or whatever, and then you sit around with this free time and you're like, I'm not happy.
And how often do you think people in the over 100 years ago in this area would be woken up in the middle of the night cold and have to get a fire going again? How would you like that? Like having your fire go out and you have to tend to a fireplace fire.
Right.
At like 3 a.m. and you just want to get some sleep because you got to be up and go back out in the fields. It's like, geez.
And these are things that I think a lot of people don't think about. And I never really thought about it until I have an actual fireplace that you have to put wood on. And on really cold days when we have a fire going, and occasionally we to keep it going through the night, well, somebody's got to keep adding every hour or two. You got to keep adding more wood to that. But as things advance, then the next generation doesn't realize how tough it was just 20 years ago. And then it go 20 more years, and then they forget how.
They find artifacts that they can't explain. They find old artifacts and like, what was this for? And then they're like the Baghdad battery. They claim it was like a clay pot filled with everything that would be needed to make electricity. It's like, who knows? Who knows back then what things were. Things might have been used for art. They might have been used for everyday ease of, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? It's not comfort, but it's just to raise the quality of everyday life. You'd have to do. Like that. Like I said, we don't know what people used long ago to keep their homes warm, do we? I mean, in certain seasons, things change.
Well,
and everybody in those places might have used certain little tools that no one understands what they're even for today.
Right. We can
Quality
always
of life.
we can learn. We can always learn from. We can always learn from the past. Yeah. When you go back and you study.
Shut the door, I suppose.
When you go back and study things, I mean, if you look at old castles that are 300 or 400 years old, well, they had thicker walls, and they had, the way they started building houses, in the South, they built those with the big, long, tall windows so you could open them all up and get the air to blow through.
Yes.
They figured out figured out these things, how to do these things, but things keep changing.
Well,
and overall, we humans keep getting farther and farther to the point where we're like, well, we're entitled to this, and we're entitled to have air conditioning and a roof over our head, and I mean,
they said that like the reason why Victorian homes and the ceilings were more vaulted was for the airflow.
Sure.
To get more airflow through the homes. Like now we don't need outer airflow.
No. So now now I don't know exactly when the open concept of houses started coming into play, but back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, you just built a house and you put a bunch of rooms in it, walls everywhere, doors everywhere, because you didn't need that airflow. Some rooms have one little tiny window. Then you don't even get much light. Maybe that's part of the problem where so many people aren't happy anymore. Yeah. Maybe everybody just needs more light.
Yeah, and the windows were bigger. Like Johnny, those houses of 1902 or something. The windows would be like from the floor to the ceiling, let more light in.
For one, so anybody that was in the house during the day had more daylight.
Yeah.
But most of the people weren't in the house that much.
Right.
You were outside working in the garden. Man's work plowing the field. women are tending to the little garden or whatever, or washing the clothes outside. You spent more time outside. You got more light.
Lumber was so much cheaper that they could really make everything so heavy. Everything was solid wood and.
I don't know. Okay, I've never researched this. I don't know how long it took for, and what you normally, if you normally had a group of 10 men or what. But if you look at a little old log cabin, a one-room log cabin, even if it has a loft, how much time and effort did that take to get those logs? You got to cut the trees down first. You got to start by cutting the trees down. You got to get them down. Then you got to, you got to shape them. You got to shape them. Before you had any machines, you had to do it by hand. And then you have to have several men to build this one little room.
Yeah.
And now people think, oh, well, if we're going to have 3 kids, we need a house with 4 bedrooms. They each have to have their own bedroom, right?
There
were a lot of people that did not get their own bedroom 100 years ago.
No.
And they were probably a lot happier than young kids now that get their own bedroom.
Yep. Well, the Little House on the Prairie, there's like a little loft where they sleep above the top of the house. Like I think they had their rooms up there in the loft, and that was it. Everything else was downstairs.
And it wasn't a room.
No.
It was just a place to go sleep.
It was a balcony where they could go up there and sleep.
And maybe the girls could take their dolls with them, but I mean, there wasn't a lot of room to do much else up there.
No.
But maybe people were happier.
Right.
Because they spent more time outside. They got more light.
They were closer to each other for sure.
They spent more time together. You had to maybe, I don't know, read the Bible. If you had any other books, you could read a book together. Then, when the invention of radio came together, that was still a family function. Before television and there were radio programs, that was a family gathering.
Yeah.
You'd get together and you'd all listen and you'd all enjoy in it. And they were all family friendly. Yeah. Not like TV shows today that most of them aren't family friendly.
Nope.
Ugh. But now a lot of people spend more time indoors. Maybe that's part of the problem right there. Just don't spend so much time indoors. Get outside and be with nature.
Look at a screen.
Be out.
And they wonder why they're anxious and depressed. They don't get out and they don't interact with the real world.
Watch the birds. Watch the flowers bloom.
Listen to the birds.
I mean, I didn't listen to them. I didn't listen to birds. I didn't watch birds when I was a kid. I mean, I may have noticed them now and then, but I didn't study them. I didn't learn about them. I didn't ever try to really identify very many except a blue jay and a cardinal.
No kidding.
But, and now I'm driving down the interstate and I'm like, oh, there's a hawk. Oh, there's another one. Well, I only see them because I'm looking for them.
Right.
But if you ain't looking for that thing, it's going to be hard to find.
Right. Man, like birds and trees, I still don't know them very well. I couldn't tell you so many types of trees.
Well, and we've talked about this before. Nature will continue on doing its thing with or without us humans.
That's right.
Because nature just is.
Yep. Doing of its, he says, Alan Watts says nature in Chinese means doing of its own self. Of its own self, it's doing its own thing. Like, no, it doesn't need us. It'll keep on going without us. It's what's natural.
And birds, I'm still fascinated. I don't know, was it Roy Masters that talked about how a baby bird doesn't get a lesson on building a nest.
It just instinctively knows.
It just knows what to do.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be told. It doesn't have to be.
About that instincts are programming. It's built-in programming.
And I mean, I don't know. Maybe sometimes the mommy or the daddy bird has to get in the nest and push them out. Maybe possibly. Mm-hmm. But I mean, generally, the parent birds are usually outside and they're chirping and they're calling for come on out, it's time for you to leave the nest. Mm-hmm. Come on out. You got to learn to flap your wings. But then, when do they ever get a lesson on nest building? They don't. Mm-mm. And different birds not all birds build the same nest. Mm-mm. So this bird over here, a robin, knows how to collect mud and the proper things to build a certain kind of nest. Mm-hmm. Other birds get little twigs and branches and grass. And they're just different.
Yep.
I mean, wrens will go into a built structure. If you build a birdhouse, they will find it. You don't have to stand out there and go, come here, let me show you where it is. Let me point it out. They find it.
You watch that thing? I told you about that Universe program about nature with Morgan Freeman. How sea turtles, how they know, they go way out in the ocean and they know exactly where to come back, how to get back to where they were born so long ago and to give birth. And he said they, I forget how they tried to claim that they believe there's some movement in the ocean that they know, like a current through the ocean, they know to follow. They just instinctively know.
Salmon, all I mean,
upstream,
yeah. I mean, if you study nature, it's very fascinating how these animals, most animals, I mean, there may be some ones that are considered more dumb, but but most animals know how to just continue to survive. They know how to build nests. They know how to build their beavers. Beavers! Look how industrious beavers are. Building a dam. Watch, if you've never watched an army of ants. I did one time camping. And this may sound gross, but I was outside at a picnic table, or I was outside. And I trimmed my toenails. And I watched ants walk off with my toenail clippings.
Oh my gosh.
And I followed them to where they were going, but they were so industrious.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't just one or two, and then there's a couple ants sitting over there going, yeah, I ain't doing that.
All the little ants are marching.
They just started following each other like, we're working together, it's a team effort. Boom.
They have antenna. What's he say in that song by who is it? The Dave Matthews Band. When all the little ants are marching, red and black antenna waving, they all do it the same. You know, he's like how they know.
But we as humans, we sit around going, well, that guy's he's doing more than he should be doing because I don't want to be doing that much. So, or sometimes people do too much and they're like, look at that lazy person over there.
Did I show you that? Did you see that video that I posted about the fleas? A jar of fleas in a jar, and you put a lid on it. Leave it like that for 3 days, and they'll never jump higher than that lid was. And then if they have offspring, they'll never jump any higher than what those fleas do. They just know. They've been reprogrammed.
Right.
And that's what they're trying to do with us in society, is reprogram us.
They're doing a good job.
Yeah. Even our diet is so poor, and they say the pineal gland. They say people would wake up and they say the third eye. The source of the third eye is the pineal gland. Have you never heard that? The little thing in the back of your brain. It's actually shaped like a pine cone. And they claim at the Vatican, even the Vatican has a statue that looks like the pineal gland. And they said that all this food that we consume nowadays dulls the pineal gland.
Well, I can go even farther, because it's my belief that cars are not made, which, I mean, we weren't really built for sitting in cars and driving long periods of time. I don't think our bodies were, originally intended for that. So cars are not built to keep us healthy. Furniture, I believe that most of the furniture being built today is not really healthy for us, because we're not supposed to be sitting around for hours and hours on end. Yeah. So it creates us,
Well, even they say shoes. There's been professional foot doctors and whatever, they say shoes are terrible. They said shoes are like casts for your feet. That people should be walking on the tips of their feet, like not even using their heels. And
there's a lot of problems that can come from not proper care of your feet.
Yeah, back problems and everything.
Yes, someone I know, her mother-in-law had been having back problems, and she's already had a hip replacement. And then once she went to see the doctor says, I think you're probably going to need that other hip replaced. That's causing your back problems. And then they're like, oh yeah, wait a minute, that's what happened before. She was having back problems. And then the doctor finally says, you need a hip replacement. Well, then that fixed the back problems. So now she's having back problems again. The doctor says, I think you're going to need that other one replaced. But sometimes we only focus on, okay, it's my back. Why is my back hurting? Are you taking proper care of your feet? Are you walking too much on concrete? Are you, what are you?
Was one thing leading to another? Is that what it is? Possibly.
I mean, I've been having knee problems
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when I sleep. It's not. I mean, for years and years, I never had trouble sleeping, and now in the last year or so, I have nights where I'm like, oh, my knee, ow. It's, I've tried the little pillow between my thighs, and that helps sometimes.
Okay.
But
Could be arthritis.
It's not just my knee, it's my hip. It actually started in my hip. But is that my problem? Is it the hip, or is it something totally different that's causing that? But I'm not.
Diet could be in the diet too.
Yeah, because is it something else that's causing it to, come up in my hip and my knee, or? But it's not. I did not appreciate all those nights of good sleep, because now when I don't have, I'm like, oh, this is not fun. Waking up every half hour and trying to flip over and find a new position.
Yeah.
And
I turn over like every so many hours, every 2 or 3 hours in my sleep, I turn over.
Hey, I'm okay with that. 2 or 3 hours, I turn over. That's what I used to do. I'd change positions. But now it's waking up because I got pain, and I go, oh, I got to try to find a spot where it's not painful. Well, I've tried taking that right before bed, and it hasn't helped yet.
See, they say that so much of this food we eat is inflammatory, causes inflammation, especially the carbs. And I've been eating carbs.
I'm pretty sure I probably eat too much salt.
Fried food. The guy was that video. He was talking about vegetable oils. Stay away from vegetable oils at all costs. He said vegetable oil should be in your engines. It's not really, but the body doesn't know how to accept it. Dr. Berger's talked about this, and he's like, Mom still uses margarine, and Dr. Berger's like, no, butter. Butter is healthier for you in so many ways than margarine. They demonize butter because they wanted to sell that vegetable spread. And they say it's not natural. Your body doesn't know what it is, and it causes inflammation. They said you definitely need to stay away from fried foods at restaurants because they're cooking and so much. And he said, not only that, they're making it worse because they're heating it, and then cooling it, and reheating it, and cooling it, reheating it, cooling it, reheating it.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Like if they were cooking in lard, like we used to use lard, we'd make pork fritters and our fritters in lard, but now they're using that oil. Not the same.
Well, and there were people that cooked with lard, and at some point they started making lard sound bad. But there were plenty of people that cooked with lard. Now I don't know. I mean, yes, natural. There were plenty of people that died earlier. But was it because of the lard, or was it because of other things?
Now, I tell you, bacon fat is rough on your arteries. I love bacon, but I've literally ate so much bacon before I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Like, oh my God, I shouldn't have ate that pound of bacon.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't eat. Yeah, not a pound. Come on now.
No. Like 6 ounce. I mean, like half a pound. Like eating maybe half a pound or so. Even that, like you notice when you go to restaurants, they never give you more than 2 strips of bacon. Like they never give you more than 2 strips whenever you order. That episode, you never seen Parks and Recreation where Ron Swanson goes, "Bring me all the bacon and eggs you have." And he goes, "I didn't mean a lot. I mean, bring me all the bacon and eggs you have."
Well, now I don't know. Since I learned how to cook scrambled eggs the Gordon Ramsay way, well, I don't know if eating them, if you cook them not like that, if that has any effect on your body. I don't know. But they taste better cooking them like Gordon Ramsay does. But he
doesn't use milk, he says butter, right?
He says yes, he uses butter, real butter.
It makes them so much better.
But he also says that don't salt and pepper them because that changes the structure. Yeah. So, okay, if that does that to the egg before you get it done cooking, well then does it have any effect in your body if you do certain things with it?
Right.
And that's something I liked about Alton Brown.
No,
he talked about the science behind things and why.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Why you use this certain type of fire with this, or why you use this certain type of thing with this, because this gives you brown. I mean, somebody said non-stick skillets. There are certain things that just won't get brown in non-stick skillets. Mm-hmm. So if you go, oh, I've got this fancy new pan, and I'm going to cook my such and such in it, and then you go, well, why isn't it getting brown? Why isn't it? Well, maybe it's one of those things that won't ever get brown in a non-stick skillet.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to go back to the regular skillet if you want to get if you want to get brown on it.
Yeah. Well, steaks. so many guys have shown me on Food Network to use a cast iron skillet with your steaks.
Well,
do them in a cast iron skillet.
And also, if you've watched very many people cook, even if they don't have a cast iron skillet and they cook it in a regular like frying pan, how many have you seen brown it and then put it in the oven?
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah,
they do that a lot.
That's what Alton Brown says to do. Finish it off in the oven for about 3 or 4 minutes.
Because you sear it,
yeah,
and then put it in the oven. Then it's cooked slower.
Cooks it through, yeah, yeah.
Because I know when I was a kid, I used to think I didn't like steak. Because first of all, I didn't want
Mom ever making steak.
I didn't want any of that pink in there. What? That could be bloody. But then if you cook a steak well done, it's usually chewier.
They say it's not blood. They say all the blood is drained from the steak before you get it. They said it's just a byproduct of cooking the steak. It's like the juices in the steak is not blood, even though it's red.
Well, as a kid, you see that and you think it's blood. And if you cut a steak with very many veins in it, you cut a raw steak, you'll see blood.
Yeah.
So now, cooking it changes the structure. But so as a kid, when I thought I didn't like steak, well, I don't like chewy meat. I don't want to have to.
Right.
I'm not a caveman. I don't need to like. Argh!
Right.
So once I had a medium done steak, I'm like, boy, that's nice and soft and tender, and it's seasoned properly and it's cooked right. Oh, wait a minute, I do like steak. I do like steak, but I also know when somebody hasn't cooked it right, because if somebody hasn't cooked it right, then I usually don't like it.
I was always overdoing it, and then I watched 2 or 3 videos of Alton Brown. The way he does like ribeyes is exactly how I do them now. On the 500 degrees, get this cast iron skillet hot at 500 degrees in the oven first. Take it out, put it up on the range, make sure it's good and hot. Throw your steaks in there. Of course, have olive oil or whatever oil you're using on both sides of it, and flip them you flip it once or you flip it over. You each side like 2-3 minutes, and then in the oven for like 3 more minutes.
Does he add butter? Does he add butter? Because I've seen because high temperatures butter will burn.
Gordon Ramsay does.
Butter will burn at high temperatures, but you start with oil, and then you can add butter later for flavor.
Yeah, butter at the end. I don't remember if he did on that one. Now, Gordon Ramsay, he made these really fancy pork chops. Oh yeah, he'll take the butter and he kept like
bathing it. Yes, you're
keeping it going through the meat, basting
and
it
keeping it moist you're basting it.
You're basting it. Yeah, so Gordon Ramsay, he made those pork chops with all kinds of peppers, and he had like pepper stir fry to go with the pork chops
and back to humans. I mean, instead of eating all this processed food, and fast food.
Jordan Peterson and
maybe we should just be cooking steaks and I don't.
Jordan Peterson he's on a pure beef diet, like him and his daughter. All they eat is like beef.
Oh, well, I don't know if I want to go that far.
Like it.
But I still think it's okay to eat potatoes as long as you don't eat tons of them and that's all you eat every day. Don't eat a big pile of mashed potatoes one day and then it'd be the big French fry
Jordan
pile.
Peterson's daughter had all kinds of inflammation and pain, even through her 20s and going in college, and she just kept cutting out things, and she got down to where it was only green vegetables and meat, and then she just went to pure meat, and before she could have the pain go away. And Jordan Peterson said he lost all his inflammation by cutting out even vegetables. Well,
that's what I think is probably my problem with my knee and my hip is inflammation. The funny thing is that I used to think if you had inflammation, then it's going to show, right? If you had inflammation in your hands, your hands will look swollen.
No, not in the joints.
It's right. It's very low grade. But that's what I used to think. I thought, well, if you got inflammation, you look swollen in your knees or your ankles or whatever. That's not true, because I think that probably is my problem. But
I don't know that Alan's really got arthritis. I think it's been his diet. He eats whatever he wants. He ate an awful lot of McDonald's still driving around.
Yeah, I mean, I still think he has the inflammation problem.
He had to let me know. I went and he talked me into trying one. He said something about McDonald's, and I'm like, I rarely ever. He's like, oh, you gotta try that new smoky BLT burger. I'm telling you, it's different. it's a quarter pounder with some kind of sauce on there. It's like a smoky sauce. And I'm like, it's not that different than any other McDonald's burger. Now I said I've tried it, you know. Like, they're not going to make them healthy.
Well, I still like a McDonald's cheeseburger now and then.
Little diced onions on there.
I don't, yeah, mustard and ketchup. I like the combo of mustard and ketchup.
Mustard, ketchup, pickles.
But I don't want one every day.
No,
I'm getting to the point where, I don't know if you'd call me a snob, but I'm getting to the point where I don't really want to go to a restaurant if I think it's frozen burger patties and frozen...
Sure.
Frozen cheese sticks and frozen, you know, everything, and they're just taking anything out of the freezer and frying it or, you know, cooking it on the, I mean, make me fresh. Meatloaf. I wouldn't even eat meatloaf as a kid, but I mean.
People pay the money of Starbucks, and I've told Johnny, I said, man, we could start up a food truck and offer people healthier options like keto, and people, you know, eventually it would take off because people know they're getting real food, but they're going to pay more.
Not every option has to be considered healthy.
Right.
Because just real food, freshly cooked, is healthier than
could you imagine
fried foods or processed.
If people could feel the benefits of eating better food for you, not great food, but better food for you, as fast as they do a Starbucks coffee. Like, when people drink Starbucks coffee, they're like, oh, yeah, now I can get going for the day. But could you imagine if you actually did eat healthier and then you felt like you could feel that rush suddenly like you do from coffee? Because coffee's a moneymaker. It just is. Like, now we're having those scooters pop up. People are not going to stop buying coffee.
Well, it is a moneymaker, but I wouldn't necessarily. People have got that's another thing that people have gotten to so used to having their fancy coffee that you may drive past a Starbucks and there's 10 cars, which means you ain't getting your coffee like that. No. Sometimes you may have to sit there a while before you even get your coffee.
That John Panette, the comedian, he's the great food comedian before Jim Gaffigan. He did that one special around the world in 80 buffets. But he was funny. He said I have to go get a Dunkin' Donuts coffee just to stand in line for a Starbucks coffee. You know. Yeah, he's the one who he's making fun of the Chinese buffet. He's the one that go, you here too long. You eat like whale. You here for hour. You eat like whale. He's the one you can't get away with that no more. You know. Yeah, it was all about food for him. He'd tell you about all the foods that he was addicted to, you know, that he couldn't get enough of. The little round-faced guy.
There again, I still go back to, say, 80 years ago. I mean, women mostly were home and cooking fresh, home-cooked meals.
Out of the like a lot of foods out, like Mom, a lot of stuff out of the garden.
Yeah.
A lot of chicken. They could go out and just slaughter a chicken.
Sure, and you're eating fresh chicken.
Yeah, you're eating fresh.
You're eating fried chicken that you just killed the chicken that day.
Mom's so sad that Abby don't want chicken. I'm like, Mom, the chicken that you're getting from Walmart is roided up chicken. That's not even the protein. There's not even much protein in that chicken because they're not natural. They say Dr. Berg does a thing. He shows the chart of how chicken has changed in America in the last 30, 40 years. He goes, you want to get real good chicken today? You're going to pay $20 a pound or something because real chickens are small. They're not these big monster chickens like they're giving them hormones to make them get that big. And they're He says they're full adult gestate. What do you want to call it? Full adult maturity used to be like a year and a half, and now they can make a chicken get to full size in like half the time by what they're feeding it. And I think that's why people say that's why they won't call Kentucky Fried Chicken no more, because these chickens are like mutants. That's why they call it KFC, because it's not even a real chicken. You wouldn't want to see it. They said that they're like the chickens like lose their beaks. They're like chicken freaks, you know, because they're bigger. They're not natural.
But again, like I said, 80, 100 years ago, you're eating fresh, way more fresh food, fresh vegetables, fresh, you know. And
even we did because Mom
even when you canned your green beans for the winter, you still had fresh green beans.
Right.
You didn't have all this.
Fresh tomatoes out the garden,
you did it yourself.
Beans, fresh. We had fresh corn, fresh, you know, all that stuff.
You did it yourself. So then when you pulled it out in the winter, you didn't have all these extra things in it, extra salt or whatever.
Well, Roy Masters said that we shouldn't even farm every year. And they said, Dr. Berg said over in Europe they still don't. They don't farm those same fields every year. But farmers here want to make so much money that they just keep, and because they're robbing too many of the nutrients out of the soil.
Sure.
If you don't give it time to like
replenish
its nutrients, then
it's like humans. We need to rest to replenish our batteries for the next day.
Him and even Bill Burr said, go over and eat a tomato in Italy. He said, the tomato over there is like a fucking fruit. It's sweet. But our tomatoes suck here because they just constantly make them.
Well, the produced ones.
Sure.
Because anybody that likes sliced tomatoes will tell you, yes, the ones that are out of season have no flavor.
No, exactly.
But if you're growing them in your own garden, they're good.
Sure. They're seasonal.
And and you can can those. You can make your own tomato sauce and make your own spaghetti sauce and make your own, so you can use those tomatoes to use through the winter. You had more fresh stuff. You didn't have all this processed stuff with all this salt added and preservatives added and everything. Even bread. Before sliced bread in a bag, you made your own home fresh bread. And they probably didn't have, most of the time, they probably didn't have any bread left at the end of the day.
Sure.
Because you ate it with breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Oh, yeah.
While it was fresh.
Yeah, fresh bread.
And you needed the energy to go outside and do all that work that you were doing outside.
That's right. And carbs and burn it all.
You burned it all off. And so now we don't need all those carbs because people aren't burning it off.
Right. I don't know how long you wanted to go. That's over an hour there.
Oh, is it? I was thinking.
Abby'd asked, is there anything I'll be able to play my game?
Oh, yeah.
And then I should drink some caffeine. My eyes are getting... I haven't had any caffeine since early today. My eyes are getting dry. My eyes are getting heavy. I'm going to need some caffeine when we get off here. Even if I stay up much later. I want to be up much later tonight. I thought about playing this game after we get done, but I'm like, I don't want to do that now. It's hurting my eyes just to look at the screen for very long. I may call it quits right here.
Yeah.
Because Abby was wanting to eat and then come in here. Hopefully Jacqueline moved that line.